Om. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhu Cha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Yata sarvani bhutani pratibhanti sthitani cha yatraivo pashamam yanti tasmai satyatmane namaha. Welcome back. How was your trip?
It was very good. Lots of wild animals.
Where did you go again?
Yellowstone and Brandytown.
Oh, my friend Charles was just there. Did you see any bison?
We did.
Lots of
Not so much.
Did you see any bears?
We did.
Any
We saw
wildcats?
mama bear and 2 baby bears. No wild.
No bears. So what shloka are we on? I think we're starting a new chapter. Who would like to chant tonight? Mark, can you let us
Yeah.
know where we are?
We're on number 1819 on page 183.
Page 183, verses 18, 19.
Section 2, 1890, new section.
Right. Do you have the song?
Chitta Samadhanam, the contemplation of the mind. Dinante sa samadhatu punareva manodadhe idanim chintayanartha tata tishtami shailavat kalanam asti nastiti bhankatvat swachatam gataha. At the end of the day, section 2, contemplation of the mind. At the end of the day, he again directed his mind to contemplate. Now, open quote, now there is no purpose served by thinking. Therefore, I shall remain like a mountain, having broken the understanding, it is and it is not, and gone to the state of very great clarity, end quote.
Yes. So he is a jnani of the class who is fond of samadhi at this point. Chitta Samadham, I think, is the chapter title, right?
Yeah, samadha.
So the idea is, what is samadhi? So he brings that mind into that intense introversion. All thoughting has stopped. Achieving what I call unknowing, which is different than not knowing. The doubter itself has been silenced. So now let's see what happens after again he spends time in samadhi. Going on.
Iti sanchitya sadhyane punasthaस्थौ dinani षट् tata prabodhaman panna kshana supta ivadhavagah tata siddha chiram kalam jivan mukta tayasthitah. Thus, having reflected, he again remained in meditation for 6 days. Then he regained his earthly consciousness just as a wayfarer who had slept for a while. Then, accomplished in the realization of truth, he remained for a long time in the state of liberation while living.
So he stays in samadhi for 6 days. Then his mind returns because of past impressions. Now, one of the questions many people have, if you look at logic, if samadhi happens when all the vasanas have been burnt up, the mind enters into samadhi. Why don't you just stay there? Why don't you just drop dead at that point? Why is, and some Mahatmas do, but others return to this world with activity in some form. They're what we call Jivan Mukta, liberated while alive. Now, we have all sorts of theories and philosophies on prarabdha karma, what we think is going on because we see their body. But the mark of the person of wisdom is that she knows she's not her body. So is this body and its process through worldly life important? Then we can even go to a deeper place. If the physical body is conjured up, just like the dream body, do you have any concern for your dream body once you wake up? And was the dream body and its world of cause and effect really real? Now, some scriptures will say this deep absorption in the self, remaining in profound silence, is the highest. We have saints like Anandamayi Ma, Ramana Maharshi. I sent some of you the little YouTube clip about when Swami Tapovanam met Ramana Maharshi. Is there anybody who didn't see it?
I didn't
I
see
think
it.
I'll put it out on the email. It's just
I
delicious.
don't believe I watched it. My apologies.
But what he does is he goes to see Bhagwan, and he goes up to the cave, and he has some bananas, puts them at his feet, and he just sits down in front of him. Bhagwan doesn't say a word. He just looks into his face. And the two of them sat that way for an hour. Then Ramana Maharshi gets up and goes to have his bhiksha, his lunch. And Tapovanam, he wasn't yet a Swami, he was still just a brahmachari, heads down the hill. He says the silence just keeps getting deeper and deeper as he walked down. Then there are other Mahatmas who were very active, like Swamiji, King Janaka, Shivananda. Can't tell from the outside. But the knowledge they have is always the same. Do you know who you are? Do you know you are that partless Brahman? Or do you think you are your body or your personality? And what sort of experiences the equipment has? That's karma. And if the person is worried about it, he's not even a jnana yet. So this fellow in samadhi returns, Jivan Mukta. Let's see as we go on. Next verse.
Videha kevali bhave vancha prapya tata kramat Paddha padmasana sthitva tatro vachatmanatmani. Then, having gradually acquired the desire for the state of bodiless aloneness in the spirit, that is liberation without the body, and remaining firm in Padmasana, a yogic meditative pose, he spoke to himself within as follows.
So this idea of videha moksha, videho moksha, liberation beyond the body. One interpretation of this is when the yogi drops the physical body. It goes back to the physical elements. The subtle body goes to the subtle elements. There's nothing left. But there's another definition of videha, videho moksha. If you know you are that grounded being, and you know you're not the body, then that's liberation beyond the body. So, Jivan Mukta, Videha Moksha, I wouldn't get too caught up with it. Most important thing is, do you know who you are? And do you know that you are the source of all bliss? And can your mind revel? Next one. Yes.
In the last verse, you started the discourse. You were saying why is it that when people achieve samadhi, they come back? Maybe I missed it. Did you say why that was?
Yes, it's simply the force of the past of the body itself. What the scriptures would call prarabdha karma. That's how they explain it. But that's actually a teaching for those of us in ignorance. Because we see the body. See? But for the man or woman of wisdom, nothing changes. I am not the body, never was. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I was unclear. Go on, next verse.
Raga niragatam gaccha, dvesha nirdveshatam vraja, bhavadabhyam suchiram kalam, iha prakriditam maya. Passion, go to passionlessness. Hate, proceed to the state free of hatred. I have played with you for a very long time here.
Oh, this is beautiful poetry. So, in my ignorance, I played with passions. I've played with aversion. I've done more, better, different. I've gone for cash and prizes. I've done drugs, sex, and rock and roll. Done it all for a long, long lifetimes. Here it's all dried up. Where did it go? Next verse.
Bhoga namostu yushmaibhyam janmakoti shatanyaham bhavathi lalito loke lalakairiva balakah. Enjoyments, salutations to you. I have been fondled by you during hundreds of millions of births in this world, just as a child by fondlers.
So we fondle the child, we dandle it on our knee. This can also have some quasi-erotic connotations. But pleasure, bhoga, enjoyment. I fondled you for lifetime. Now, I think it's the next verse. He tells us what the result of that fondling is going on.
Imam api param punya nirvana padavim aham yena vismarita tasmai sukhayastu namo namaha. Repeated salutations to that pleasure by which I was made to forget even this highest and holy position of nirvana, or absorption in the absolute consciousness, or liberation from the limitations of matter by union with the Supreme Spirit.
So salutations to all that bhoga, who's had as its result the forgetfulness of my essential nature. So when I dance with an object from the viewpoint of egoism, I am going to enjoy that object. And after the fact, I ruminate, oh, that was really wonderful. I want to do that again. Awesome. Then do another enjoyment, another vasana. Another enjoyment, another vasana. Until the mind is cocooned, just like the silkworm building its cocoon. The result is Dharana Shakti, the non-apprehension of my essential nature. Some lifetimes, as the result of merit, things may work out reasonably well. I hit the green lights of life. Other lifetimes, because of papa, it sucks, and I suffer. Of course, we get that in just this lifetime. all as the result of fondling by the world of enjoying. I was talking with a young man, and he got dumped by a boyfriend. And he's a bit wrecked by it. First of all, it's humiliating. And he hasn't been able to let it go. And what I pointed out to him, most of us are more than willing to attempt to renounce our suffering. It's ours. But who of us wants to renounce enjoyment? This was a hot love affair. Of course, indiscriminate revelry with the object of the senses, we get attached. We almost always get attached to the pleasure side of the balance. Unfortunately, once I've gotten attached, when, not if, it all turns. I can't let go. Too late. Just weep. We'll pass. Any questions about this? Let's see what happens to our poor fondled fellow going on.
Tvaduktena hidukkham mayatma vishta adarat tasmat tvadupadishto yam mama margo namostute. O sorrow, burnt by you, the self was sought by me eagerly. Because of that, this path of mine has been taught by you. Salutations to you.
So, namaste, sorrow, suffering. Because that, for most of us, is the engine to seek liberation. It is theoretically possible for someone to develop the intense desire to let go of the world, turn within, simply out of love of God or deep interest. However, for 99.99% of us, the engine for our sadhana is the response to our sorrow. When I get sick and tired of being sick and tired, then I go the other way. Any thoughts on this?
Reminds me of that
So-
line from I Am That.
Pardon
Suffering
me?
is the reminds me of the line from I Am That. Suffering is the price we pay for not letting go.
Yes.
I think is yeah.
Or Justin, what he's talking about is exactly what we get in program with a bottom.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Is that we were attached to we don't want to give up the pleasure, is what I tell every newcomer that I see. Yeah.
Yes.
And with
No
pleasure
one-
comes pain.
We don't begin to get sober until we've been beaten up by drugs and alcohol. Hit the bottom.
Yeah.
All right, next verse.
Mitrakaya mayadhyatvam yajase chirabandhavaha adhigamyatma vijnanam swasya nasha kritatvaya. O friend, my body, you, an old kinsman, are abandoned by me today. Having acquired the knowledge of the self, your own destruction is accomplished by you.
So, this body has been my companion for years. And if not this one, then a prior one. Kinsman. But now I've abandoned. I am not the body. And I watch as the body completes its inevitable journey to the grave. I was teaching a class back in the 80s, and it was in the daytime, and the vast majority of the people in the class were people with HIV/AIDS. Not everyone. And there was this one fellow, James, a wonderful yogi. And he was pretty sick. And it was pretty clear that his time was reasonably short. Those days, it was 6 months to 2.5 years before you died. And I remember someone in the class said, James, what's it like to be dying? And he just laughed. And he said, we're all dying. The only difference is when. He just happened to know when it was going to come, sooner rather than later. But I tell you, every single one of you is dying. Having a physical body is a sexually transmitted condition, and it's always fatal. Think. So what the scriptures say, for God's sake, don't waste this human life. Strive hard for liberation. So he's perfectly willing to let the body go, return to the elements from which it came. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Ekakinya vishushantya prashante mai dinaya tvaya dukkham na kartavyam mata trishne namostute. O mother, my desire, when I am calmed or ended, grief ought not to be assumed by you who are dejected, alone, and withering. Salutations to you.
So he speaks of desire as his mother. And now he's calm. He leaves all that behind. He says to his desire, don't grieve. Don't be dejected. How many of us, all between our ears, sexual passion, food, money, prestige, all, even when it's not physically present, it's going on in our minds. So the woman or man of wisdom lets it go. And in the beginning, the mind, and then the imperious tyrant leaves us. Next verse.
Shantavya kama bhagavan viparita paradhajaha dosha upashamai kantam prajamyadisha mangalam. Venerable lust, the blemishes produced by wrong offenses are fit to be forgiven. I go to the state of absolute tranquility. Announce your benediction.
So, whether or not you're practicing brahmacharya, the Master Jesus said, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've committed adultery in your mind. Who of us is free? All my peccadillos, my transgressions, my falling short. God. One of the things I love about the scripture is, it really, really gets the human condition. Now, we live in California, in the Bay Area, young people. Our sexual mores are far more liberal than in other times and places. That doesn't mean we lived up to our highest ideals, I bet. At least in our thought life. Don't worry about it. Let that all go. Next verse.
Nama sukrita devaya bhavate stu tvaya pura narakebhya samuttarya swargeham abhiyojitah. Salutations to you, the deity of virtuous act. Formerly, having been delivered from the hells, I was joined to heaven by you.
So, salutations to right action, to virtuous activity, by being committed to that. I was delivered from hells. There's a wonderful slogan to share with you. If you want self-esteem, do esteemable actions. Duh. But that's a very early and basic part of our youth. Our yamas and niyamas. Right speech, right livelihood. Even qualifications of a fit suit, and all that sort of stuff. It delivers us from the hells that we get when we live life adharmically. We're not living in a way that's conducive to peace and to good relationships. When you lie, when you're greedy, when you cheat, you're full of resentment, you're vengeful, shut people out, you slough off at work, all the things we do. And of course, we karmically experience the results. So through virtuous action, we're delivered from the effects of these. We amend our lives. We do it differently. But then he's going to say, now, even all of that is gone. Next verse.
Bhavanta sahaja prana praktana suhridomaya kramenadhyo kritanunam swasti vostu vrajamyaham. You, vital heirs or vital energies, born together with me and my old friends, today you are indeed gradually thrown out by me. Farewell to you, I depart.
Yes. So the prana, the vital energy. If you've ever been present when someone actually dies, I recommend this. In the West, we try to sanitize death, we're really scared of it. But if you're present, set all the emotional stuff aside for a bit and just tune up and be present to what's happening. The transition process can be really, really beautiful. But at the end, sometimes you'll even see the subtle body above the physical body. It'll just shimmer. And usually the person will go through, it's a kind of breathing. I don't know what it's called, but it's so similar to when a woman has a baby as when you're having sex. The prana leaves the energy. It's incredibly beautiful, incredibly mystical. See this great mystery when the prana finally leaves. Helps us experientially let go of our fear. Next verse.
New section, section 3. Kevali Bhavaha, the state of aloneness or final liberation. Evam kalitavan antaha prashantam na naishanaha shaina rachara yastaram pranavam prapta bhumikaha jahau indraya tan matram tamo matram jahau tataha uttishta prastufurudvam shanam tejo vicharya saha tyaktva tam cha babhuvatha na tamo na prakashanam. Vitahavya, who had thus reckoned within his thinking and seeking calm or subdued, and the yogic step or state of transcendence won, abandoned the subtle elements of the senses, sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, slowly uttering the mystic syllable Om. He then abandoned the mere darkness that followed. Then, having meditated for a moment upon the light rising with the form or luster, spreading far and wide, and having given up that also, he was in the state which was neither darkness nor illuminating.
So here the scripture is making reference to what many people experience in near-death experiences. First, there's the shock or the trauma of whatever it is that's killing you. But then people will experience themselves frequently, like above the body, in the subtle body. They'll look down and say, oh, look at them, they're getting out the paddles. You start my heart, you know. And then everything, the scene will shift. And frequently there's like a tunnel. People will have loved ones or sometimes just beings present. Then we're in the presence of a light that he talked about, this great light. And our life passes in front of us, and we are judged in the presence of this light. Now, I may have shared this with some of you before, but we're going back well over 30 years. And I was at a conference where I was supposed to give a presentation on Vedanta. But ancillary to my presentation was a presentation on near-death experiences. There are half a dozen people on the panel. And the mode of their near-death was different, but what happened was amazingly similar. And when they talked about this judgment, to a one, they said what they thought was important in their life was not. It wasn't the money they made. It wasn't what they accomplished. It wasn't, you know, even if they were an artist, their great art or anything like that. It was the small acts of genuine kindness that they did to other people. And then, of course, they came back. That's as far as they went. They go thunk back into the body. They weren't done yet. There was more to do. But here, Vitahavya, he goes beyond even that experience of the presence of the white light. Next verse.
Tamavasthamatha sadhya nimesharthatmanopapat tato samvidam tato samvida swastham pratibhasam upagatam nirmeshardha adharbho bhagem kalena kalanajahau. Now, having reached that state, the mind fell or was cast away in half a nimesha or a fraction of a second. Then, in one half of a nimesha or a small fraction of a second, he gave up putting on the self-abiding part consciousness or individualized consciousness which had come to perception. Note, this refers to the annihilation of individuality and the entry into the state of undivided consciousness in yogic samadhi.
Now, we can look at this as someone going through a death experience, but we can also look at this journey as the journey of the meditator. So now, Vitahavya finishes that last attachment, last identification. That personal sense of self is gone. Before this deep nirvikalpa happens, discriminating between the self and the ego is a practice. After nirvikalpa, there's no person anymore. gone. It's like waking up from a dream. Next verse.
Pashyanti padamasadhya sattam atratmakam tatah sushupta padamalabhya tasthau giririvachalah. Having reached the step or position of pashyante or perceiving, which is of the nature of mere being, he then remained immovable like a mountain, resorting to the abode of profound repose.
So he's in that state of deep, deep self-reliance, deep repose. No distinction between knower, knowing, and known. Everything is dissolved. Does it mean this is the state of leaving the physical body for the saint? Or does it mean the deepest realization? Both. Next verse.
Sushupte स्थैर्यमासाध्य तुर्यरूपम् उपाययौ निरानन्दोऽपि सानन्द सच्चापि तत्र स चिन्मयो चिन्मयश्चापि नेति नेति यदुष्यते. Having obtained firmness or steadiness in that state of profound repose, he arrived at the state of Turiya or Turiya, the fourth state of consciousness. There he was blissful, though devoid of bliss, was existence or being as well as non-existence or non-being, and full of consciousness as well as not conscious, which is described as not this by the philosophical portions of the Vedas, that is the Upanishads. Note, this apparently paradoxical statement expresses the fact that the fourth state of consciousness transcends experience and defies definition.
So I illustrate it this way. Here's the self, here's the mind. Waking state. Dream state. Folded up in deep sleep. The deepest samadhi. For some, the mind returns. Oh my gosh, no, I get it from you. So we remember that experience of the disappearance of everything. Next verse.
Tata tat sambabhu vasau yat giramya goracharah purusho yo hi sankhyanam brahma vidam tatha shiva shaiva matasthanam sarva susamachetasam yat sarva shastra siddhanto yat sarva hridayanugam yat anuttam nishpadan dipakam tejasamapi swanubhut yekamatram cha sarvam cha sarvagam tatha yatekam chapyanekam cha vijaramaranam padam. Then he became that which is indestructible even by speech, which is the Purusha or the person or the spirit of the Sankhyas, the followers of one of the 6 orthodox schools of philosophy. So also the Brahman of the knowers of Brahman, the name by which the Supreme Spirit or ultimate reality is referred to in the Vedas. Shiva of the followers of the cult of Shiva, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to the sect, and the all of those whose minds are even or wholly good, which is the true logical conclusion or the established view of all the scriptures, which corresponds to the heart or inmost being of all, which is the unsurpassed and steady illuminator of even luminous bodies, which is of the nature of one's own direct cognition only, which is the all and also all pervading, which is the one and also the many, and which is the abode devoid of decay and death.
So it's straightforward, self-explanatory. Nothing really to say. Next verse. Is that the end of the section?
One more. Trishad Varsha Sahasrani Vrihrityaivam Yatha Sukham Vitahavya Shashamaivam Punarjanma Vivirjitaha. Having passed 30,000 years thus at pleasure, Virtahavya became quiet or extinguished, destitute of rebirths.
So he was in this deep samadhi for a very long time. When the scriptures has these astronomical numbers, we aren't to take them literally. This means a really long time. Any thoughts or questions about this section? It's one of my favorites. Just beautiful, beautiful poetry. Beautiful. Lays out very clearly what the progression towards the infinite is for all of us. All right, next section.
Section 4. Chittanasho Dvividha. The 2 kinds of disappearance of the mind. Sri Rama Vacha. Sri Rama said, Jivan Mukta Shariranam Katham Atma Vidamvara Shaktayo Neha Drishyante Akasha Gamanadikaha. Best among knowers of the self, how is it that powers like moving in the sky are not even seen here in the bodies of those liberated while living?
So some yogis have what we call siddhis, occult powers. Many do not. Why is it that some do and some don't? So I want to share with you a bit what Swami Tapovanam said about all this. So you want to fly through the air. A bird could do that. So you want to stand still for days at a time on one leg. Vichasana. A tree can do that. You want to immerse yourself in the frigid Ganga. for hours at a time, not moving. A stone could do that. There is only one siddhi that's worth achieving. And that is peace of mind. Everything else is trivial. Siddhis are the results of tapas, doing various mental practices. It's like when you see some bodybuilder, you go, oh, what do I have to do to get muscles like that? What do? Go to the gym, work out all the time. Big muscle. That's all siddhis are. You just do it with your mind. It's all it is. For some of us, if we've practiced acquiring siddhis in other lives, in this life, they may spontaneously return. It's not something to go after. It's not, in and of itself, a mark of spirituality. Oh, I'm going to a psychic. It's just a silly. Any thoughts on this before we go on? Next verse.
Vasishtha Ch. Vasishtha said, Anatma with amuto, Anatmavid amuktopi, Nabho vihara pranadikam dravyam antra kriya kala shaktaya prapnoti Raghava. Raghava, one who is not the knower of the self, though he is not liberated, obtains abilities like moving in the sky by the power of suitable materials, sacred words, religious rites, and opportune time.
Yes. So, because of various rituals, various tricks taught by maybe a teacher, various austerities, one acquires these kinds of siddhis. But it is not a mark of a man or woman of wisdom. Now, there is one siddhi by which you can tell a man or woman of wisdom. When you're in the presence of a Mahatma and they're deep in reveling in the self, and you surrender to the point where you experience what Swamiji used to call a borrowed glory. If it gives you an experience of your own self-nature, that's a great siddhi. That's the siddhi of the Mahatma. Ramana Maharshi had it. Probably the one who had it the greatest in the last century was Anandamayi Ma. My friend Julie Jackson went to see her in 1974 at the Mahakumbh Mela. And she said, you just got within 20 feet of her. Everything fell. That's a great accomplishment. But again, not necessarily to be done by will or effort. It's grace. It's grace. Next verse.
Natma Jagsyaisha Vishaya Atmagno Hyatmaratik Swayam Yasyecha Vidyate Kachit Sa Siddhi Sadhayatvalam. It is not so with the knower of the self. Because the knower of the self is himself the self-knowledge, that is, he has become the undivided consciousness devoid of subject and object, and hence desireless. Let the person to whom even a little of desire exists secure enough powers.
So for the person of steady wisdom, cities are forever. Knock yourself out. They have no desire. So of our 4 branches of yoga, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, jnana yoga, each one is designed for people with a particular temperament. The karma yoga path is for people who predominantly contact the world through their body, through action. They're doers. Bhakti yoga is for people who contact the world through their feelings, through their emotions. What kind of people are attracted to Raja Yoga? Interesting question. People interested in power. Okay. What powers? Raja Yoga will give them to you. It ends in samadhi. Many people get stuck going. Jnana Yoga is a non-intellectual path for intellectuals. People who approach the world through their understanding, through their intellect. Now, most of us practice an integral yoga. We combine some stuff. Each has its benefits, and each one has its pitfalls. The Jnana yogis, what's the pitfall? Unnecessary study of the scripture. I think if I just read enough commentaries, read enough books, read enough scriptures, I'm going to figure it out. It is not figure out. Next verse.
Jim,
Yes.
What are the, I guess, like dangers of the other 3? Curious.
Well, you can probably figure it out for yourself. For the karma yogis, I think I can get there by being virtuous. My good behavior. If I just do enough good actions, enough charity, enough gift giving, if I save enough people, that's going to do it. That's a pitfall. For the bhakti yogi, there's still always the sense of separation, always the sense of separation. God is the other. God is other. And people can get wackadoodle high doing kirtan and stuff like that. And then when you're not doing your devotional practice, the world still sucks. So you're dealing with vairagya, some of those other practices. Is that making sense? Good question. Good question. And there are other pitfalls. You can probably come up with some yourself. All right. Going on.
आत्मज्ञस्य तु पूर्णस्य इच्छा संभवति क्वचित् परमात्मा पदप्राप्तौ नोपकुर्वन्ति सिद्धयः. To the knower of the self who is fulfilled, on the other hand, desire does not arise in any case. Such powers or abilities do not assist in the attainment of the abode of the Supreme Self.
Yeah. So where do they fit in all this? In the Raja Yoga tradition, we have yama, niyama, the do's, the good behavior, moral precepts, asana, yoga postures, pranayama, very valuable. Then comes pratyahara, sense withdrawal. Then comes dharana, concentration. So in the acquisition of all these various techniques, people learn single pointedness of mind. Was it you that was telling me about the Qigong dude? It was you, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Who had these incredible siddhis. Tell us about it. And what he finally in the end said.
I forgot what I told you, but I think he
could like touch people and they fly across the room.
he had a lot of energy skill.
But in the end, did he say that was what it was about?
Yeah, you got to give it all up if you want liberation.
Yeah. But here was a fellow who had acquired siddhis, a real live siddha yogi. He threw you across the room, didn't he? Probably deserved it. But again, the one siddhi that's in value is peace of mind. Atma Ramana, to be able to revel in your own self-nature. Next verse.
Sri Ramovacha Vitahavya Tanur Magna Katham Klinna Na Bhutale. Sri Rama said, how was the body of Vitahavya, which was immersed within the surface of the earth, not wetted, that is not affected by underground water and the like?
So remember, Vitahavya was in Samadhi for all those years, and there he is in the earth. How come he didn't rot? How come plants didn't chew him up and stuff like that? Let's see what the answer is.
Sabahya Abhyantaraha Spanda Chit Sabahya Abhyantraha Spanda Chitta Jo Vata Jo Thava Nayasya Vidyate Tasya Durasthao Vikritekshayao. Change and destruction are far away from one to whom there is no movement, external and internal, produced by the mind or the vital air prana.
So many of the scriptures will say that in the deepest samadhi, it's almost like hibernation in the body. Heartbeat reduces to a very slow level. The breath comes to almost a complete stop. Prana's just all gathered in the heart center. Don't worry about it and don't try to make it happen. What are we to do? Vairagya. Renounce. Doesn't mean change what's going on in the world. Don't you leave the world. Let the world leave you. Let go of attachment. Let go of aversion. And then abhyasa, practice, meditate. As you move through life, watch your heart. If your heart moves, you're the one with the problem. It's never, ever out there. Viveka, Vairagya. This is the stuff to focus on. Not being able to see auras or astral project or lucid dreaming. You know, I have had students who have wanted to do this stuff. And I have learned that if you try to dissuade them, they just don't tell you about it, but then they do it. So, you know, we go through stuff. I personally, I never tell people not to study this, don't study that. You know, follow your intuition. But if you pay attention, you're going to find that a lot of this stuff is just bells and whistles. That's all it is. And remember what I said, Raja yogis are interested in power. For me, when I was doing this stuff, I'm just a little bit superior to other people. You know, I have psychic abilities they don't have. Maybe if I'm a little bit superior to other people, then they might love me. That's where it all went back to me. So I'm not saying not to do this stuff, but you will find that it's just a vanity. And look at, okay, what's going to be the payoff? And it's not just these psychic siddhis. Look at what you're doing with your life. Are you absolutely attached to being, you know, number one on your team at work? You know, do you have to be able to talk about your crypto portfolio with your friends? Is there such a thing as a crypto portfolio? Probably. Are you a better person if you have a boat? Are you more valuable if you own your property rather than rent? I'm not saying not do this stuff. We're all going to do this stuff. But what do I want out? What do I want out? And I love to go back to the saying of St. Augustine of Hippo. Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rest in thee. Find the pearl of great price. Come home. Okay, we'll end here tonight. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Was Jory online tonight?
No, he wasn't.
Okay, I need to text him, find out if he's okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.